Can we confirm here today that there is no court order of any kind that limits your ability as a witness before the grand jury to discuss your own testimony to that grand jury?
We can confirm that pursuant to my action that that grand jury testimony has been released, the transcript.
What unfolded was not just another routine hearing. It felt like a pressure test for the very foundations of federal law enforcement. And right at the center of it stood Kash Patel, facing an intense grilling from Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, who came in locked and loaded with serious concerns that the Bureau might be quietly drifting into dangerous territory. The accusations were anything but minor, ranging from whispers of an internal enemies list to claims that standard security background checks were being subtly manipulated. And as those allegations were laid out, Patel responded with firm, sweeping denials that seemed designed to shut everything down in one stroke. But here's the thing. Even with those denials, the tension in that room told a different story. Because beneath the surface of that exchange, something deeper was clearly at play. Something that hinted at a growing crisis inside one of America's most powerful institutions, raising uncomfortable and still unanswered questions about whether politics is slowly seeping into a system that is supposed to remain completely neutral.
Director Patel, welcome.
Thank you, sir.
When you were here for your confirmation, we talked about your so-called enemies list. It appears to me that there have been adverse actions of various kinds taken against about 20 of the 60 people on your enemies list. You've been in office for 7 months. At that rate, you've got 14 months until you've hit all 60. Can you explain that?
Again, that is an entirely inaccurate presupposition. I do not have an enemies list. You can continue to characterize it as you wish. The only actions we take, generally speaking, for personnel at the FBI are ones based on merit and qualification and your ability to uphold your constitutional duty. You fall short, you don't work there anymore.
Well, there was a list. You don't like it to be called an enemies list, and it had about 60 names, and about 20 have had an adverse action. So those are, I think, pretty clear facts. Let me move on to your grand jury testimony, which we also talked about when you were here. I think you indicated that you understood that a witness in the grand jury is free to discuss afterwards whatever they told the grand jury. And you then went on to suggest saying, I can't go into court orders granted by the D.C. District Chief Judge, and you want me to violate a court order. In those remarks, you fairly plainly suggested that there was a court order of some kind that somehow restricted or limited your ability to discuss your own testimony to that grand jury. Since then, that chief judge that you mentioned, Judge Boasberg, has written, and I'm quoting him here, Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 6E allows witnesses like Patel to divulge the contents of their testimony, meaning that nothing was preventing him from doing so before the committee. Can we confirm here today that there is no court order of any kind that limits your ability as a witness before the grand jury to discuss your own testimony to that grand jury?
We can confirm that pursuant to my action that that grand jury testimony has been released, the transcript.
Let's, in what forum was it released, may I ask?
Publicly.
Okay, we'll check on that. The FBI does background investigations. In the case of a U.S. attorney, Jeanine Pirro, it has come to light that in a civil proceeding, that Fox News executives, prior to her confirmation, called her, I'm quoting here, a reckless maniac who makes, quote, insane comments, and said, I don't trust her to be responsible, and noted her penchant for what they called random conspiracy theories on weird internet sites. My question to you is, did that turn up in her background investigation?
For any background investigation, Senator, we do not discuss those publicly. And for every background investigation, when there's an adjudication, it is not made by me. It is made by the career professionals who run the inspection division and background check system.
Do you know if that information was found? You see, we're an oversight body here, and there are really three possibilities here. One is that the FBI background investigation didn't find that stuff. That's worth noting because these investigations, full field background investigations, are supposed to find that stuff. That's possibility one. Possibility two is that the FBI did in fact find that information and then did not report it to the administration or to the committee. And the third is that you found it, you reported it to the administration, and they went ahead with her nomination knowing that she had been described as a reckless maniac who made insane comments, who wasn't trusted by colleagues to be responsible, and who had a penchant for random conspiracy theories on weird internet sites. Are you saying that this committee does not have any authority or reason to look into which of those things is true?
This committee can look into anything it wishes. I'm telling you that the background investigations that are done by the HRD division are done by career individuals. They do not report the details of those to me. They adjudicate those independently and individually. That's how it's always been done.
What happened during the pause of FBI background investigations that was alleged in the complaint against you and the FBI by the FBI agents who were terminated? On February 12th, Emil Bovee directed the FBI, quote, to pause any FBI background investigations of Trump nominees until Patel was confirmed, which happened on February 20th, is the general description of what they alleged. Why, do you know, were background investigations paused? Was it so material like this could be scrubbed out of them? And have they been resumed without that pause fully and normally after your arrival on February 20th?
I can speak to the time period since I got there. Background investigations have been ongoing across the board at the FBI.
Why was the pause, do you know?
I was not there.
Wasn't explained to you when you got there? Oh, by the way, boss, they've had an 8-day pause on background investigations. You think that would be something that would be explained to you at some point?
Again, I leave it to the men and women at HRD division to run background investigations. I do not interfere with them.
I get that. But what I don't get is whether you were told about that pause, and why would you not be told about that pause?
I don't recall that, sir.
All right. The allegation also relates that part of the employee review of senior staff was whether or not they voted for Kamala Harris in the 2024 election. Since when is who you voted for a proper question for agents to be asked?
I don't know what allegation you're referring to, Senator. If it's from an ongoing matter in litigation, I can't discuss that. But what I can discuss is I can only speak to the FBI's background investigations. There are other background investigations conducted across the government. I can only speak to mine.
So just to clarify, I'm not talking about the FBI full field background investigations. I'm talking about internal employee reviews for promotion, for termination, for job actions of various kinds. And my question to you is it now the policy of the FBI to ask agents who they voted for, and since when is who agents voted for a proper question for the FBI to ask?
Taking those in reverse order, it's not a proper question, and it's improper to allege that I'm doing that. And also at the FBI specifically, under my leadership, we do not ask who you voted for. And just one correction for the record, if I may, Senator, it's Security Division that runs background investigations, not HR.
Senator Sheldon Whitehouse didn't hold back for a second as he pressed Kash Patel with a relentless series of questions that dug straight into allegations of bias, internal obstruction, and possible misuse of power inside the FBI. And the way he broke things down made it hard to ignore the seriousness of what was being suggested. He started by challenging Patel's claim that he couldn't discuss his grand jury testimony because of a court order, a defense that quickly fell apart after a federal judge clarified that witnesses are actually allowed to talk about their own statements, instantly putting Patel on shaky ground. From there, the questioning zeroed in on whether there was an internal enemies list being disguised as routine staffing decisions, along with deeply unsettling reports that some agents were being asked about their 2024 voting choices during what should have been standard evaluations, something that, if true, crosses a serious line. As the pressure built, more concerns surfaced about irregularities in background checks, including a case involving a U.S. attorney allegedly targeted after media pressure, and a strange pause in vetting certain nominees that suddenly ended right after Patel's confirmation on February 20th, raising eyebrows about timing and intent. Patel repeatedly distanced himself, claiming he wasn't aware of the details and suggesting those processes were handled by career staff. But by the end of it, the situation felt far from resolved, leaving a lingering question hanging in the air about whether these gaps point to simple dysfunction or something far more deliberate happening behind closed doors.
Bloomberg Law is reporting the latest entry in the most expensive dating arrangement in federal government history. Quote, the FBI forced out a senior official overseeing aviation shortly after Director Kash Patel grew outraged about revelations of his publicly available jet logs indicating he'd flown to see his musician girlfriend perform, said three people familiar with the situation. Stephen Palmer, a 27-year veteran of the FBI, became the third head of the Critical Incident Response Group, which includes FBI pilots, to be fired or removed in Patel's short regime, adding to a year filled with retributive terminations. Back with us is Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. And Senator, it sounds like there's a new question for confirmation hearings for FBI directors. Will you use the plane for date night?
Yeah, he kind of teed this up for himself, old Patel did. Mm-hmm. He repeatedly, it wasn't just that once, he repeatedly attacked Chris Wray, who, by the way, had done great service to the Trump administration, providing cover for the fake Kavanaugh investigation. So he kind of has been turned on here, Chris Wray. Mm-hmm. But anyway, there's Patel attacking him over and over and over again about use of the FBI jet. So there's the hypocrisy. Then with all these Trump people, there's the entitlement. I mean, this is bling for them. They just want to eat up every executive perk they can get near. And frankly, the more they abuse it, the cooler it seems to be for them. So buzzing around the country in the FBI jet for dates with his girlfriend seems like an okay thing to them. And then what's really cheesy, I mean, the part that angers me here more than even just the waste, is that when he's caught, when he's busted doing something that stupid, instead of owning up to it, he takes it out on a 27-year FBI veteran who runs the Critical Incident Response Group, and he fires that person because his tail, the tail number on his jet was being tracked the way the tail numbers on essentially every jet are being tracked. So there was nothing that the Critical Incident Response Team leader did that was wrong. Patel just needed a fall guy. And I got to believe that in an organization like the FBI, when you start doing things like that, it starts to poison the agency against you. And more whistleblowers begin to emerge because they know the boss is not competent and not decent and was bad for the organization that they serve and love.
Senator, about those whistleblowers, is someone on the Democratic side of the Senate Judiciary Committee penciling in a possible hearing if the Democrats win back the Senate of all of these people who have been fired in this Trump FBI?
Yeah, and actually, we're going to hear from them a good deal sooner than that, because 3 senior FBI agents who were fired have filed a civil lawsuit contesting their firing. And as that proceeds, there's going to be the opportunity for discovery. And discovery is always the jewel of litigation. And so I strongly suspect that a lot of emails, a lot of communications, a lot of conversations that are reported in depositions are going to come out, and it is just going to make this, I call it the gangster gong show crowd over at MAGA DOJ. It's just going to make this gangster gong show crowd look worse and worse and worse. And it snowballs as people begin to see that there's really no power at the top. The guy's a clown. He's a pretty crooked clown. And people begin to pull away as the evidence emerges of just what a botched job this FBI leadership is.